Back on the Young Turks. Now we're going to talk to someone who's actually trying to change the system that we have. I've told you all the different ways that the system is corrupt and captured by corporate America. We're going to talk to Larry Lessig. He is the head of Change Congress, and he's pushing for public campaign finance reform and public financing of campaigns. Larry, welcome to the Young Turks, first of all.
Thanks for having me on.
We really appreciate you coming back. But before we talk to you, I want to quickly show the audience an ad you guys put together about Mike Ross. So let's watch that.
They fought it in every way. Yelling, screaming, trying to defeat any real health care reform. And through it all, Senator Blanche Lincoln and Congressman Mike Ross have stood with the health insurance industry and their allies by trying to kill the public health insurance option, which would force insurance companies to compete. 80% of Arkansas Democrats support the public option. Why won't Senator Lincoln and Congressman Ross stand with Democrats now, or we'll find someone who will?
I'm sorry, that was the FDL PAC that put that together, although I love that ad.
Yeah, that's pretty good, too.
Yeah, and it's the same guy that they're going after, Mike Ross. This is the ad that you guys put together. It's a little longer, and it uses some clips from Keith Olbermann, and I recognize your voice on there as well.
That's right.
All right, so let's watch that one.
We held the bill hostage in committee.
What did Mike Ross hold hostage? The public health insurance option, which Arkansas voters overwhelmingly support.
Sandy Barham is 62 years old. She's got a bad heart. She's hoping her valves will hold together for 3 more years until Medicaid kicks in, because she can't afford insurance. Not just for herself, mind you, for her employees, too. She needs the public option. So do those 6 people who work at that restaurant of hers, Congressman Ross. You are Sandy Barham's congressman. Hers, sir, not Blue Crosses and Blue Shields. So far in your career, Congressman Ross, your total haul from the health sector is $921,000.
The things I don't like about this job is we do have to raise money to get reelected.
Congressman, if you're so tired of raising money from special interests to oppose your constituents on issues like health care, do something. Join the bipartisan bill to replace these corrupt special interest funded elections with citizen funded elections and restore trust to Congress.
Now, Professor Lessig, I want to ask you, why is everybody going after Mike Ross, Democrat of Arkansas?
Well, we're going to go after a whole string of people. Mike Ross is just the latest, and the reason is that he's clearly going against the interest of his constituents, as poll after poll demonstrates that the overwhelming majority of Arkansas voters support the public option, and he's received an enormous amount of money from the healthcare sector. And you put those two things together, and from my perspective, that raises the question of the kind of corruption that's going on in Congress. Not that necessarily he's been bought, but everybody can ask when he behaves in this way whether money is driving results in Washington or whether good sense is driving results.
Now, first of all, I can answer that question for you. He's definitely been bought. Okay, I know you don't want to say it, but I have no problem saying it. And so is Kent Conrad, and so is Max Baucus. So how do we hope to change these guys when we're not the ones paying their bills, the corporations are?
Well, we got to change the system that they operate in into a system where special interests don't have the power to buy them because people get elected raising money either in small contributions of $100 or less, or get their money through a graduated state funding system based on their qualifying for those state funds. This is the public funding proposal that Senator Durbin and Congressman Larson have advanced in Congressman Larson in the House that just received its first hearing. That system overnight would change the economy of influence in Washington so that special interests didn't have an extra say in the way policy got made in Washington. And that's what I believe has to happen right away.
We're talking to Larry Lessig. He's professor of law at Stanford Law School, and he's the head of Change Congress. You mentioned a graduated system there. What exactly is that? Can you spell that out a little bit more for us?
Yeah, so basically the system that Durbin and Larson have put together, and they're the Democrats, obviously. In the House, it's Representative Jones from North Carolina, and in the Senate, it was Arlen Specter, but they're pulling together another Republican to support the bill now. This bill basically gives funding in 2 ways to candidates. Either you qualify for state funding by establishing a certain credible amounts of activity in your campaign. So you gather a certain number of signatures and small contributions of token amount. And once you do that, then you demonstrate that you're a credible candidate, and you begin to get money from the government based on the stage the campaign is in. But then in addition to that money, that kind of grub stake you get from the government, you get to raise as much money as you want at $100 contributions or less. Now, under that system, the one thing we can say is that if Congress makes a stupid decision, it's not because of the money. It might be because they didn't study the issue well enough, there are too many Democrats or too many Republicans, whatever your view is, it just won't be because of the money. And we need to get to that place because we need to have a system where people can believe that, in fact, it is reason and judgment and figuring out what the politics is that's driving decisions, as opposed to figuring out how best to raise money from special interests.
Well, the downside of the current system, obviously, is that is in terms of the chance of your plan succeeding, and Senator Durbin's plan, et cetera, is the downside is that the government is, I think, nearly entirely captured by corporate America and lobbyists as we speak. So that makes it a little harder. The upside is a lot of them are tired of being captured, because they're tired of having to go and grovel and beg these guys to raise the money. But the third flip side of that is it does give them an enormous advantage over new challengers. So given those ups and downs, what's the likelihood of success here?
Well, what we've got to do is to change the calculus of each of these members of Congress. So we've got to make it harder for them to live under the current system. And Change Congress is doing its part. So we are launching a series of attacks on members who act against the interests of their constituents or against their principles, but consistent with the money they've received from special interests. When you act in that way, you can expect that eventually you're going to be hit by one of these ads like we're hitting Mike Ross right now, like we hit Conyers before, like we hit Ben Nelson before, like we hit Mary Landrieu. In each of these cases, what we're doing is we're targeting people who are behaving in a way that leads people to believe money buys results in Congress. Now, more and more congressmen and congresswomen are beginning to say, I don't like living in a world where my integrity can be so easily questioned, right? Because that's basically what these types of attacks are. We're asking them to defend their integrity, and they don't like having to do that. So if we can make the existing system uncomfortable enough for them, and then other campaigns, like the campaigns of Public Campaign and Common Cause, can make the alternative seem attractive to them by demonstrating that, in fact, in places like Arizona and Maine and Connecticut where they have systems like this, you don't immediately have the defeat of incumbents. It takes a sustained amount of campaigning for incumbents to lose any kind of advantage they've got. So it's not like they are going to be thrown out right away. And instead of spending 30 to 70% of their time raising money, they can actually do what they thought they were elected to Congress to do. Now, the advantage we've got in this cycle, in addition to extraordinary amount of frustration at the way in which Congress is being stopped in the reforms that people thought we elected Barack Obama to achieve. The great advantage we have in this cycle is that this is the freshest Congress, meaning the largest number of freshmen, in over 15 years. And what that means is there's a large number of people who get to Washington, had these high school civics dreams about what it was going to be a congressman, and then are told by their chief of staff that they've got to spend 3 or 4 hours every single day dialing for dollars. And those people are the most likely to want to change this system right away, because that's not why they went to Washington. And they can have a system where they could actually do what they thought they were there to do.
Professor Lessig, I got to ask you then, are you going to go after the king at any point? Because if you look at the Obama White House, it looks like they did the same exact deal as Max Baucus and Kent Conrad and Mike Ross did with all these healthcare industries. Any chance you're running that against him?
Well, we definitely want to have public funding for presidents. And, of course, it was a disappointment that Barack Obama thought that the existing system wasn't good enough, and I can understand why he thought that. But, as much as I believe that Barack Obama should have adopted a higher road here in pushing for major reform in Congress, I think what this cycle is demonstrating is that changing the president is not enough. And people who thought that you could elect a president like Barack Obama and then get health care, get global warming legislation, get reform of the financial services, get food safety, get every single issue that we care about passed, were just extraordinarily naive. It's going to take more than a powerful speaking president who can inspire to make those changes. It's going to take changing the second most important part of the process of making laws right now, and that's Congress.
We're talking to Larry Lessig. He is a professor of law at Stanford Law School, and in fact, one of the most respected law professors in the country. So that's why I've got to ask you in the limited time that we have left here, on a separate note, what did you think of Sonia Sotomayor saying in Supreme Court arguments, questioning whether corporations are even, whether they have personhood? In a minute, did you think that was an interesting turn of events?
Well, it's interesting, and historically, she's very well supported because the constitutional claim for corporations to have status of personhood is very, very weak, and this has been well known forever. And this, if a true originalist in the Supreme Court could easily say enough of this game, and let's go back to what the framers of the 14th Amendment really imagined. But I actually think that's beside the point. Even if corporations didn't have personhood, we still would have to worry about whether the funding in electing members to Congress was driving them to care more about some interest rather than the interests of their constituents. And that's exactly the system we've got right now. So even if she succeeds in getting personhood taken care of, we still have to change the way Congress lives in its economy of influence right now.
Professor Larry Lessig, thank you so much for joining us on the Young Turks.
Thanks for having me.
Young Turks.